Hello and welcome to Farming Simulator 17. I'm Andy and this is the Let's Play on the OGF map. So this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode today because well, I've about 21 minutes left until my washing machine is done. I have to go fix that. So a little shorter episode. We have lots of manure in there. I want to spread that. I think I've emptied all the stuff out of the slurry. How's the animals doing? Maybe we should feed some cows. I think we could feed them. Give them water. Where do we have the water trailer? It's over somewhere. Just go and give this food to our cows. Anyway, I must say something interesting. I was listening to a podcast in Swedish that we're talking about. This is the book. There's an author who's a Swedish author that has started selling a book called Surrounded by Idiots. I don't know if that's the correct translation when it's released in other countries, but that's what it's called in Swedish, translated into English. Which is an interesting book, and the interesting part is that please don't go and buy this book. Doesn't matter how many people read it and how many people think it's brilliant. It's not brilliant. It's a scam. The author Thomas Eriksson, he claims to be a behavioral scientist. His translation in Swedish is called beteendevetare, which is what I am. The only thing is he has never studied, or at least passed any sort of, well, he doesn't have any degree from higher education, and he has never, as far as anyone could find out, ever took any sort of, at least he didn't pass any classes in higher education. So he has no education, and he claims to be a behavioral scientist by just studying behavioral people's behavior for 20 years or so. But the thing is, then everyone is a behavioral scientist, aren't they? So anyway, so I started listening to some podcasts that were talking about this book, and the podcast is by a couple of actual research scientists in psychology, and they pretty much totally, well, the book is based on a popular, at least in Sweden, popular test called DISA, which sort of pretends that, oh sorry, we can empty it here, that says that people are divided into colors, which is just to make it more visual, but they're like 4 different personalities, and you have one or a few. Why am I hitting? Jeez. So, which is an interesting theory. The problem is it doesn't really add up, because if you it doesn't add up, and the reason is for that is that it's not you can have like one personality. You have, if you look at the psychology research, the most established research about personality and psychology of the personality, the psychology of personality, is something called the Big Five, or oceans, which is basically 5 traits, which is sort of, you can have more or less of these traits, and that differs. Is not a set, and there is no value to them. And in the DISA personality test, they have sort of like, it's good to be yellow if you're a certain job, or and that's not the way the psychology of personality works. It doesn't work that way. It never worked that way, and all the base of theories and research has concluded this for decades. So, and the base for DISA is actually a theory that was developed in the 1920s, which never held up very good to the science science standards of the 1920s, and definitely doesn't add up to the science of today. But for some reason, it appeals to people that I'm a red person, or I'm a yellow person, or a blue person, and I can understand definitely the idea about that, but the problem is there's no science behind it. Where did I get the water? Oh yeah, maybe it was somewhere. So he basically based this book, even though he has a really sketchy idea. He never claimed to have any higher education, of course, but still he gives the impression that he's an expert. He claims to be an expert in this field, which is interesting because there's so many other experts that claims that he's not an expert. I left a couple of bales up there, I just saw. So please don't spend money on the book. If you want to read some psychology, it shows something that actually is psychology, not just some sort of made up psychology thingy. But anyway, I was looking at that, at this stuff that's written about him, and then I found this podcast and I listened to it, and that led me onto something that I actually learned tonight, which I had no idea. Something called never myths. So myths about neurological, psychological aspects that aren't true. And these are a lot of things that I actually thought were true, and I pretty much realized that they weren't true because I had no clue where they came from, which I should have known. I'm not a complete dimwit, so can I get water here? There's a tower there. How do you get the water then? So there's a few of these myths which you could sort of find interesting. I don't know where I'm going actually here. Oh yeah, water? No, maybe. Yeah, here, feeding water. Okay, good. No, that did not work. I did not. No, sorry, that's where I put the water, sorry. Total dimwit there. Where would I get the water? Anyway, a few of these theories are really interesting. This water? No, that's probably not water. Oh no, I think I remember where I placed the water tower suddenly. That's not that, that's slurry. Maybe it's that form. So anyway, just getting back to the subject. So a few of these myths were really interesting, and I thought this was true. So I was, until this tonight, I had no idea, and I thought it was true, and apparently I was totally wrong. So one myth: you can play Mozart to children or infants, and they will have a high IQ. Totally bogus, as it turns out. And actually, it's based on a study which had nothing to do with children. It was a study where you played music for grown-ups, and in several different that's not it, conditions, and they found an increase of like 6 or 7 points on the IQ scale. The problem is they couldn't replicate the study, so no one else could replicate the study, those findings, and therefore it's not really science. It wasn't ever replicated, so there's no proof of it being that way, and that was among grown-ups that had nothing to do with kids, and somehow that got distorted into it being about kids being smarter by Mozart, playing Mozart, which they won't get smarter, and we won't get smarter either, by the way. People don't get smarter. Interesting, I think they actually passed a law in Florida where they actually sort of made it mandatory to play Mozart for kids in preschools. It's totally stupid. And based on a misconception about... Didn't I have a water tower somewhere? Where did I put the water tower? Did I put a water tower anywhere? Where did I put a water tower? I just need to see how much it cost. So that's one of those myths. Bogus. 18 grand. I thought I did put a water tower somewhere. Maybe I forgot. I'll put a water tower somewhere here. Didn't I put a water tower? I just want to put a water tower somewhere. We'll put it here. So, totally bogus. SB Farm, I think it was SB Farm, or was Luke maybe. And I know there's somewhere place to find the water, and I can't remember it now. So that's anyway one of this. Another myth which I believed firmly in was the idea that there is different ways of learning. That there's a visual, auditative, and that's the wrong word, by the way, and kinetical. I could visually learn I would visually learn stuff, where I would feel it with my hands, or I could hear it better, and that I had different learning styles depending on who I am, basically. I definitely until this evening thought that was true. As it turns out, it's not true. We were actually talking about this, me and my fiance, and my fiance said, "Well, I've learned better if I." She said, "Like, I learned when I was studying. I found that if I put different colored things over the text, I learn better," which is probably true. The thing is, probably everyone, if they use that type of method in a not like overly ordered way, if you use it on you just put colors or everything, it will probably be distracting. But if you use it in a simplified way, when it's called for, and in not an over-structured way or too much, probably everyone will have positive effects of that sort of learning style. It probably, or maybe people that can't see colors might have a problem, but otherwise, pretty much everyone will have some sort of positive effect of that thing. So, and that's the problem with that sort of ideas, that how do you separate that style, that science from other kind of science, which of course you can't. That's the whole thing. You can't separate it. Where did I put the trailer? Okay, sorry. Well, that's interesting. So that's one of those things that was disproved, another myth. Also another myth that there's that some people have better left side brain activity or right side, and that there's somehow an idea that if you could balance out those differences, that would lead to better life or better science or that sort of stuff. Which, of course, isn't true either, apparently. What else were there? The idea that we only use 10% of our brain. Not true. We use the entire brain. I read a study. I could maybe put a link to that in the description, if I remember it. There were the authors to an article I read actually talking about that. How could that myth has a prolonged life? And it's been disproven. We use our entire brain. That's the way it works. Actually, if you calculate the amount of knowledge we have, and look at, even though we have billions of neurons in our brain, if you calculate the amount of information they need to hold, and you said like each brain cell had one piece of information, it wouldn't be enough. So the most theory when I when studying higher education is that it's actually a pattern on, so like you have a set, maybe there's like 10,000 neurons firing at the same time, and when they fire at the same time, it's a pattern which equates to a chair or something, because otherwise you wouldn't have enough neurons to do what we do, or know what we do. But still, so they were reasoning why the myth is still there that we only use 10% of our brain, and that's probably because there's a difference between or a number of things why it's still there. But one thing they talked about was that there's the notion that you have white brain matter and gray brain matter, and there's a difference in the amount, and like 10% of the gray brain matter is 10% is gray and the rest 10% is white. But if you studied some sort of medicine or anatomy or psychology, you know that the white brain matter is basically fat. So when someone says that hey, fathead, you should take that as a compliment, because that's mostly what your brain is made of, fat. In Swedish they call myelinskidor, which is surrounding neurons, and then that's actually what makes it possible for the neurons to fire as fast as they do, because the electricity doesn't follow the entire path, it sort of jumps over by nodes on these fatty tissues over the neurons. I can't really explain it in English that good, but so it's a lot of fat, and that's a good thing actually, but people don't seem to understand that. So there's a number, we're talking about a number of different things that could sort of be the base for this. So very interesting article, and really I learned a lot tonight. So they're talking about why these things arise, and they talked about something called selective perception and memory. That is that we tend to say if you're in love with someone, you tend to see that person quite easily compared to people you don't like, or you don't care about, or you don't have any feelings about. They tend to miss those people. So that's called selective perception, and that's also works with selective memory. You can remember stuff that your loved one did, but not someone you don't love or don't care about. You don't remember as easily those things. There's something called illusory correlation. That is that you see a correlation where there is none. So it's like, well, if I do this, this happens, but there's no correlation between those. No, so if this A happens, then B happens. And there's also illusory causation. That is that you think that if A happens, then that attributes to B happening. So if, for instance, if I'll skip 5 times on my leg, and then I'll do my long jump or something in a game, and the reason why I did a long jump was because I did the fact that that's not true, even though it could have some mental consequence on doing things the way you always do it, but that's not a separate topic. Misevaluation of the efficiency. So it's like we're talking about these brain gym things, where it's like, oh, if you go do this, you will improve your brain health. So if you do a lot of Sudoku, you will have a better functioning brain, which isn't true. There's no evidence, or very little evidence, showing that would actually be true. You won't improve your brain health or your brain's functioning level by doing Sudoku. You'll be probably really good at Sudoku, but that's pretty much it. Doesn't correlate into something else or affect any other area of your intelligence or brain function. And so why is this a problem then? Well, it's a problem because sometimes you do, let's say most of the thing, if you make a bill that says that all preschools have to play Mozart for all the kids, well, nothing happens. It's not dangerous to play Mozart for kids. So it's not a dangerous thing for them. The problem is they will spend a lot of time and money on something that doesn't work instead of using methods that actually work to improve, say, children's education capacity or levels. And they had the author of the article I read. I can just say it if it's an article called "Never Myths: Why Do They Exist and Persist" by a researcher called Elena Pasquinelli, Pasquinelli, and it's from 2012 from the Mind, Brain and Education paper. So, Elena Pasquinelli. Or you could throw a search by Neuromyths: why do they exist and persist? ? So the author of that article, she was arguing that, say, an elderly person, they would spend hours and hours playing Sudoku and crosswords and so out of the belief that that will make their brain more healthy or keep higher level capacity or fight off brain diseases that affect the brain. The problem is it doesn't do that, and instead that person would probably do aerobics, which would have higher level, and there's a scientific base for that, for improving brain health. So by doing the things that the myths keep telling us to do, which is wrong, we miss out on the stuff that actually works, which has a scientific base for doing that. So this didn't really turn out like a really big episode on the OGF farm. I mostly put about science, but I hope you liked it. I'm gonna go and grab my washing machine, and then I'm gonna go to bed. I have a long day tomorrow, so sorry about the constant talking about other stuff, and that was not my intention, but hope you enjoyed it anyway. So thank you for watching OGF farm / science talk, maybe. And don't buy the book. It's surrounded by idiots. I'm sorry, it's not science. If you want a nice piece of fiction and you read it as fiction, just an anecdotal book, then it's fine. You read it, go read it, spend your money if you spend money, but don't think you're getting science, because you're not getting science in pretty much any way. It's far from science as you can pretty much get. And you can't use anything that says in the book for any sort of actual real life application, so don't think that. And if you don't believe me, go to your university, talk to psychology professors there, they will tell you the same stuff. It's not science. Anyway, so with that note, I'm gonna end the episode here. I'm Andy. If you like this channel, please subscribe. If you like this episode, please hit like button, leave a comment or share, and I will see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.